Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give everybody a moment to join the webinar. We appreciate you being here today. My name is Louise Martirano, and I'm the Executive Director for RedLine Contemporary Art Center, which is located in Denver, Colorado. And we are so excited for people joining us all around the world for this new grant program that is originated by Artwork Archive, the Art Business Accelerator Grant. Joining me on this webinar today is the founder of Artwork Archive, Justin Anthony, and the founder of this new grants program, as well as the art grants manager at RedLine, who is also an artist, Lares Feliciano. So we hope today to answer the questions you have, which please throw those in the Q&A session that you may have on this new grants program. And kind of share a little bit about the background, the jury process, and what you can expect after you apply. So with that being said, we will probably save the Q&A to the very end, but our goal is really to answer all your questions as we go through this. But this will be available digitally, and we will send it to anyone who's not able to participate in the full session today out through an email. And we'll review that process at the end. So let me be the first to welcome, of course, Justin Anthony, who will share a little bit more about this program. Justin, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm sure people are going to trickle in. We'll say this a couple times, so you guys may get sick of hearing it, but for those who have joined late, we are going to be rebroadcasting this tomorrow. We're recording it now, we'll process it and have it up, and we'll send an email out about that. The chat is currently disabled. The Q&A is enabled. As Louise mentioned, we're gonna really try to make an effort to go through the core part of what this grant is all about, give you a little history background on it, cover some questions we've already had from thousands of you already, and then jump into some Q&A stuff toward the end as questions come in. Katie, one of the other team members at Artwork Archive, is going to be fielding those. So for those of you who are not familiar, Artwork Archive was started a decade ago by myself and my co-founder, John Feustel, with the main focus of creating a platform that provided artists the tools they need to make a living doing what they love. We've always said from the beginning that, whether you like it or not, as an artist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business. And we have been unapologetically focused on arming artists with those tools they need to be successful, and really felt fortunate this year that we were in a position to give back. It's been a decade. We really feel strongly about the topic, and this is why we felt it was important to do this grant. So I'm just actually using this Art Business Accelerator webpage that we have there. That link will also be included in this for those of you who are not familiar with it. It's just artworkarchive.com/grants/Art Business Accelerator, which now that I look at it seems much longer. So we will make sure that anybody interested has that link. So what is this? It's the intention of this is to provide visual artists with unrestricted funds, resources, and a curriculum to help establish, grow, and manage their art career. And as I mentioned, this is right in line with what we do, which is to arm you guys with the necessary business skills and succeed as an artist and entrepreneur, and to make a living through your artwork. And a lot of the questions we've gotten is, what stage do I need to be in? What level of an artist do I need to be at? And this is open to both emerging and established artists. The grant amount, this will be 10 unrestricted cash grants of $2,500 each. Every recipient will also receive a lifetime master account with Artwork Archive. And then there's a really important component that we really want to make sure gets communicated about during this, which is these educational resources and expert guidance. So yes, there are only 10 winners, but every single person that applies will be benefiting from that curriculum. We really, really felt strongly about wanting to make this a no fee-based grant, an unrestricted grant, which didn't kind of bind you into doing this for a particular work of art or anything like that, because we know how many different ways money is needed right now. And then lastly, this curriculum, we really wanted to kind of democratize some of the things we've been working so hard on over the last decade, which is really this compilation of great resources focused on helping you excel and make a living doing what you love. As far as eligibility goes, visual artists 21 and older who are working intentionally to better their communities and or address community challenges through their artwork. Louise is going to be jumping in a bit to talk a little bit more about what we mean by that. Examples of this could include, but are certainly not limited to, involvement in community projects, education, mentoring, public art. Once again, Laura's on the back end of this is going to be showing you some examples of some artists that exemplify this. Visual artists, all disciplines with a strong artistic focus in their discipline. You know, we have had tons of questions from musicians, from filmmakers, from all kinds of other performance arts. And, you know, while we celebrate those as well, our focus is really on the visual arts. So that's something we want to make clear from this. And then, of course, artists that have demonstrated high artistic quality, innovation, and creativity with a track record of participation in the arts for at least 2 years. And this is open worldwide. This is not strictly a North American grant, although Artwork Archive is based in North America. It's available for everyone. I just really want to jump in quickly and talk about the why now. You know, I mentioned these concepts, this desire to help arm artists with these skills is core to what we do. But there's no question that COVID has played a role. It's had such a significant impact on artists and the arts in general. And when we did this survey of artists, over half the artists we surveyed have lost over 50% of their revenue. So we felt that now more than ever, we always believe this is important, but now more than ever, we felt it was really timely. So, you know, this accelerator grant really hopes to bridge this gap between creative fulfillment and financial stability. You know, RedLine has been a big help through this. We've got some contributors that have helped make this possible. Louise, I can jump into a little bit about the jurors, but I think I'm going to pause that until we get a little further down, and we can jump right into one of the biggest questions, which is really this question that's come up. What do we really mean intentionally bettering their communities or addressing community challenges? So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so in the application, the terminology of citizen artist is used, and this is not asking you to be something that you are not already. It is actually really seeking to find and identify artists where this grant really is support and work you're already doing in relationship to the climate, in relationship to the culture that you find yourself in within the community that you are connected to. And it's not asking the artwork or how you apply to be everything to everybody, but really more authentically supporting what you're already working on. So contemporary arts practice does not sit within a vacuum, and Artwork Archive and this grant specifically acknowledges that. So some of you actually may be, you know, thinking about how this grant could support a project that is in relationship to a certain social issue in your community, but that is not necessarily what we mean by this terminology. It just is more acknowledging the fact that contemporary artists and arts practice does not sit within a vacuum, and that wherever you are coming from your community, how you're operating inside that context and how that can be felt. And when we go into kind of the back end application process and go through some of the questions, I can share with you where the jury that Justin is going to review now is going to be looking at your application to kind of hear more from you, how you connect your contemporary arts practice and way of being in the world with that which is relevant to your communities.
Sure. So I think, and by the way, if there are questions that we don't cover here, if there are topics that we brush over that you would like to dig in more detail to, we'll also have a means of contacting us on the webpage, so don't hesitate to do that. I know there's a lot to cover here, and we want to make sure you guys walk away with this with a better feel for what it is we're doing, why it is we're doing it, and what we're looking for when we're really doing the evaluation process. I'm just scrolling back up here. There's no question that there is a component of artistic quality, innovation, creativity. We will be looking for artistic excellence. Additionally, though, as Louise was touching on, this idea of the citizen artist is going to factor heavily into our decision-making process. When we were setting out to choose the jury, and I really encourage all of you to take a look at the grant website and click through and learn a little bit more about these artists, because we really chose them because we believe they exemplify some of the values we're looking for. Each and every one of these artists, although very, very diverse in nature, background, the disciplines they practice, etc., all have a couple common threads. Some of them have had very direct work with social justice issues or things like that. And some of them have done some important works or series that have gotten, national attention or significant amounts of attention or groundswell of support in their own communities. But those aren't necessarily the things that we're looking everyone to, represent when they're applying. A lot of the thing you will notice across the board with all of these is they are active participants in their artistic community, meaning they're supporting fellow artists. If I just, pick Thomas Evans, who goes by Detour, he's done an Art Tip Tuesday since, he started. That's just been this, free resource that's existed for artists out there in the community to help better their own practice, to talk openly about some of the challenge he's facing. Every single one of these artists has had a significant impact on those around them and have done some important work that helps support that and kind of represent their role in the artistic community. So those are some of the elements that we'll be looking at. And Louise or Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but if not, I think it would be really helpful sometimes to see some examples. And I know Laura's, you can take over the screen and give some examples. And once again, as you see these examples, if you don't see yourself in any of these specific examples, realize these are just attempts at kind of giving you a better idea for some of the elements we're looking for, not this is the box you have to fit into.
Yeah, and while Ladas is bringing up her screen, I would just encourage everybody to just make a note that you are applying to a panel of artists. So as artists, I believe there is a shared language there. This is not a panel of curators. This is not a panel of people who are not operating within a practice of understanding of what it means to make a career as an artist and to get organized in the challenges that you face during these times within the pandemic, but also, oftentimes when artists are starting out, there is just no infrastructure behind them and it's all yours to create. So as I hand it over to Lars, I just want to, remind everyone that you are applying amongst practitioners and creatives.
One other quick note just from Katie just mentioned, for those of you asking where to ask a question, the QA button should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and that's where you can enter those questions. So I'm going to jump out and let Laura start.
Thanks so much, Justin and Louise. So that was a great segue into our first example here, which is one of our jurors, Thomas Detour Evans. If you are not familiar with his work, please write that website down. As Justin mentioned, Detour offers a thing he calls Art Tip Tuesdays, which is something he posts on his YouTube. His YouTube page is full of advice for up-and-coming artists. It's full of content that really is meant to include others in his practice and invite the community to be part of what he does. He also recently came out with this book, Be the Artist, which we recommend. So Thomas is one of these examples of an artist who as you can see on the right side of the screen, is creating really beautiful and thoughtful work within a fine art practice, but his practice does not exist in isolation. The same exists for Sammy Lee. Again, highly recommend checking out Sammy Lee, another visual artist. Here you can see she works a lot in paper casting, but she also runs a residency program and has invested a lot of time and energy in this wheat pasting project to share the stories and images of folks who have died from COVID-19. So again, a very thoughtful practice that does not exist in isolation, that invites other community members to be part of it. Another example is Anthony Garcia Sr. Again, prolific muralist and visual artist. He's done a lot of work, and you can find his work all over the community here in Colorado. But he also runs a art and community center. He is part of a group called Birdseed Collective that does art workshops for youth. They invite youth, as you can see here, to be part of the art making process. And creating space for community to make art together is an essential part of his practice. So again, a really good example of someone who is creating you know, a really thoughtful practice, but is involving the community. And then the last example I have for you is Maria Molteni. Again, very socially based practice, but really, really thoughtful contemporary art practice. She does everything from murals to, you can see here, she's got some basketball courts is a huge thing that she does, along with installation and print work. But these basketball courts that she's creating, she's organizing with communities to do these murals. And it's really about placemaking within the community and within her larger art making practice. So these are just examples to get your wheels turning. This is not, you know, we aren't saying you have to fit into one of these 4 boxes we've listed here. These are just examples to get you excited and inspired. And again, to really exemplify the artist who is dedicated to their craft and their voice as an artist, but that they are not creating in isolation, that there is a deep commitment to creating within community. And that can look so many different ways. And we leave it to you to define what that is for you.
Yeah, I don't know why this just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, this
that's
popped
good.
into my head thinking, you know, another question we had, and this might come up in the Q&A as well, but like, does the size of the community matter? And the answer is no. We have, you know, so many people on Artwork Archive in particular that come from the plein air community, that paint with small groups of people that they've had significant impact on, or had significant impact on their careers. And these are, you know, small clusters. The size of the community doesn't matter. The type of community doesn't matter. I think the takeaways are this kind of thoughtfulness in the practice, and this whole citizen artist concept can just come in a number of forms. Do you guys want to jump into the actual submittable side of things?
Yeah.
Because we definitely have had a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, so, you know, this is, of course, looking at the application that many of you have already filled out, but we did want to get into some of the technicalities of this. You know, I think it's important to express that it is a value that this program has to keep this application short. Artists are asked to fill out a lot of applications across their career, constantly having to put capacity towards this work. So this is intentionally a shorter application. And hopefully is clear. But as we talk about ideas like citizen artists, you know, there are certain aspects of this where you can share a little bit more of that, again, that context in which your concepts and ideas are coming forward. Of course, you can share additional links, like your social tags, etc., where you want to guide jurors to review and see more about you. Your CV or resume, of course, can share more about the depth of your practice. I would certainly always recommend with your artist statement. I know this is just an annoying part of the what arts practice asks of artists, because I know your work and you as a person are evolving over a career, but try to connect obviously the statement that you provide with the images and your work samples, so there's a clear connection for the panelists to kind of see how your narratives takes us into the work and closer to the work. Obviously identifying if you're emerging, mid-career, or established. Again, this is open for all levels of artists, and the curriculum is really pointed at all levels of artists. Statement of purpose is another place where you can share, whether you have a particular project in mind, a particular body of work that you're working on. How we get to this citizen artist idea can be supported in this statement of purpose or your impact statement. In some ways, if you're coming out of a project that you feel like has fully gauged community, or even pushed your own practice in a way that you felt was important, that you feel like you then had something to share more broadly within the artist community or the community in which you live and are connected to. Yeah, and then of course, like, this helps the ever evolving work of Artwork Archive when it comes to your current business and administrative challenges. This will help the curriculum that is provided be more pointed towards where you're at and what you're thinking when it comes to the gaps in your practice. I know with many people who go to school for arts practice, these are not the areas that are the focus. It's more technique. It's as a practitioner, it's as a maker, and it's not necessarily how to survive as an independent business. How you qualify success in your practice, and whether it's just putting a stake in the ground and saying where you are now and where you want to go, and what that looks like based on where you are now and where you want to go. There are options to share other information, but please do know that as clear as you can be as possible, and how your application kind of uh, hangs together, and references what you provide versus necessarily asking jurors to go outside of the application frame too much, because there is an enormous application pool. Over 700 people have applied so far. And so we just want that to be clear and transparent, that, this is a competitive application process. So as clear as you can make your application, the better it is for, of course, the jurors. You can upload, of course, work samples, and then there's up to 10 opportunities to upload, and some of that can be additional information. But just again, I would say have another person review your application, just so you feel like you're sharing your impact story, your how you plan to either utilize the grant, or how you plan to leverage this grant towards what you're doing now, or the relief you potentially need. This is an unrestricted grant, so you can really apply it as needed. But just know that there's only so much room, and to be as clear as possible will be as will I think sit better with the jurors. And then
by the way, Louise,
wanna,
I want to piggyback, if you don't mind, off
yeah.
that thing you were just talking about, like the purpose. We've been asked a lot, is this grant a relief fund? I just want to make it clear, this grant was planned prior to COVID and is not a need-based grant. Rather, this grant is to provide an opportunity for artists to receive resources toward accelerating their careers. I really want to make that distinction. We know so many people have been adversely impacted by COVID and just the world around us over the last few years, and we obviously we empathize, and I think everyone can relate on that front. We just want to make it very clear, this is not a needs-based or relief-based grant. This is really focused on accelerating the career.
Well, and to that point, Justin, do you want to share a little bit about what your vision is for, the post-application process and the engagement with the curriculum by both the grantees as well as the application pool?
Sure. I think, the thing to convey here is, as I mentioned up front, we want to make sure this is worth your time to do it. We know, Louise was talking about trying to keep this short, keeping it concise, as friction-free as possible. There isn't an application, but we also want to make sure that you get something in addition. So no matter what, every single applicant will be able to participate in this, resource kit / curriculum. And so with the winners, it's going to be slightly more regimented in that we're going to be able to do a little bit more one-on-one and things like that. With everyone, though, we're going to be distributing this curriculum on kind of a 6-week basis. The kind of core pillars of the curriculum are establish, grow, and manage, where establish is really going to focus a lot more on the best practices in setting up businesses, taxes, inventory, et cetera. And then it's going to progress into this grow phase where we really start focusing on marketing tactics and other means of really, contact management, growth of your collector list, things that are kind of tried and true techniques, as well as a combination of emerging techniques that we can shed some light on. And then finally, this manage aspect, that is really the part of the curriculum that is custom tailored to focus on how to best manage your time, your career, your legacy, tips and tricks that can help you save time, be more professional, present your work more professionally. So over the course of the 6 weeks, we'll be distributing that to the group. We're going to have a kickoff webinar for everyone where we really talk about the distribution of the curriculum and then how we're going to go through it. We're probably going to, excuse me, have some webinars and some other video resources along with that. And then Louise, from a timeline standpoint, I believe, I say I believe, I should know this. I think we're on the 16th of May, applications close. And then we're going to do an official announcement about a month from that.
Correct.
Okay. And so right around June 17th, and we will be doing kind of a Zoom live stream to announce the recipients and then talk about next steps. But anybody who's gone to that Art Business Accelerator webpage, there is a little spot where you can enter your email to stay up to date. All of this stuff we will be announcing well in advance to make sure everyone has a heads up on what's coming, to make sure that you don't miss anything. And that includes deadlines, announcements about future curriculum distribution, and anything else that happens during the course of this process.
So we wanted to close this portion with Lara's sharing some best tips as far as for application. This is very familiar to many of you, but just to offer it. And then we are going to invite Katie to volley up to Justin, Lara's, and I some of the Q&A questions that came through during this conversation that we maybe did not address. So Laras, do you want to take it from there? And then Katie from Artwork Archive is going to be the voice of God, kind of directing us how to navigate your questions.
Sure thing. Thanks, Louise. So some tips and just kind of best practices, things to be thinking about as you're putting your application together. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you've reviewed, excuse me, that you've reviewed your application and you've looked it over thoroughly. You've read over it, you've answered every question, thoroughly before you hit submit. And on that note, it's always a good idea if you can find a friend or colleague who will read over your application for you before you hit send, just so you can make sure that you have an extra set of eyes to catch any of those funky typos or just weird things that you maybe didn't catch as you were working on it. You also want to make sure that even though we've got a deadline in May, it's always good practice to submit your application ahead of that deadline. Give yourself time to deal with any weird internet things or just other issues that come up. If you do wait till the last second, it will feel like you're waiting until the last second. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have really high quality images when you are submitting those work samples. Good lighting, you really want to be able to see the work and really feature that work in the best way possible. And then on that note, I always recommend people to employ the art of editing in these processes. So you can submit up to 10 images, but if you have 5 that really shine, focus on those 5. Allow yourself to kind of edit down to your best and strongest work. And I'd say the same thing for your writing as well. Brevity is key. So those are my initial tips, but I'm sure some other things will come up as we continue this conversation. So I guess it's now on to Katie and our Q&A.
And Kate, I just got a note. Those are great tips. Because I had such a confused description of the URL later, the easiest place to find this is simply artworkarchive.com. You'll see a little resources link at the top, and you can drop down and go from there. So sorry, thank you, Katie, for letting me know that.
Great, thank you all for explaining the grant so far. We've had a lot of questions come in, so we're going to go over just a few of them, and then if any more come up, we'll try and get to all of them on here. If we don't, feel free to reach out to us at team@artworkarchive.com, or we will try and get back to you in a private chat. But before that, so we'll go through some of the common questions that have come up so far. So we got a question from Cheryl about the impact about whether the work needs to be socio-political in nature in terms of organizing, which we did talk about, but it's worth going over again. So I just want to hand this one off to Justin to go over if mentoring and organizing and education count towards your application.
Yeah, they do. And I think this can either be, and it's not in front of my face right now, but that's why we specifically did that and or in the description of this in the application, because it is not so much about a particular work or body of work. This is not just for artists that work on social impact issues or anything like that. It is every bit a benefit to your community to have supported fellow artist or some example of where there's been a mentoring or influencing or just any kind of community related behavior even within your own pocket. You may be an artist from a small town and have some information that you can share on that. I just really want to make sure, because we've had this question quite a bit. We've had an equal amount of questions saying, hey, I don't do any teaching or mentoring, but my work talks about this particular issue. Great, we want to see your application. On the same side, we've gotten this, you guys get the idea. It is both. And Louise, if you want to add on to any of that, I just do not be disincented to apply thinking, well, social justice doesn't come out in the form of my art or things like that. Or by the same token, don't be discouraged if you aren't teaching, mentoring, or anything like that, because these are just aspects. It's, there is an either or piece to this.
Great, thank you. So we'll keep going. We have one from Bridget that she says that many communities have been displaced during COVID. Do virtual communities count towards?
Totally. I mean, some of us, I'm thinking of some of my artist friends are complete introverts and don't want to be around people even before COVID. And yet these people have had a tremendous impact on online communities and things like that in their own way. This is not limited to physical communities or anything like that. Virtual are every bit as viable.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question from multiple attendees. This one is for Louise. What is the difference between mid-career and established artists? Can you give us some guidance towards what these categories mean?
Yeah, I think don't belabor this question when it comes to this grant opportunity. And I'm sure if you ask anyone in the arts profession, they will give you a slightly different answer to this. So this is for the purpose of this application, I think it's more to kind of just understand the applicant from a place of what they could need and what they would get from this Arts Accelerator Grant program, not necessarily a criteria that the panel is going to be looking at which qualifies you or does not qualify you. So I hope that, you know, again, these are levels that are often talked about, you know, where mid-career you usually you've had your solo exhibition like in a gallery or a museum, and, you know, established you are more, you are fully making your career as an artist full-time, and you know this is kind of the trajectory you are in and the ground in which you stand on. But I always hesitate when it comes to jargon in the art world, so to speak, because it's not always helpful. But this really is just to try to for Artwork Archive's position and how they continue to speak to those utilizing the platform, and how this grant can best support people understanding where you're at in your career. But I wouldn't think more than 2 seconds about that question.
Yeah, don't blaze through it. Whatever your gut tells you, do it. It is absolutely has zero factor on evaluation. It is entirely existing to inform how we go about structuring the final curriculum and helping inform where we're going to spend the most time on. Because if it skews one side or the other, we probably are going to custom tailor the curriculum to be a little more upfront or a little more on the back, depending on what the audience looks like. What's next, Katie?
Great. This question is from Christina, and I'll hand it off to Lares. So will a draft application advice or feedback be available prior to submitting? And then there was another similar one about if you submit and then you want to change it before May 15th, is that something that you can do?
Great question. So unfortunately, just due to the volume of applications, we won't be able to provide feedback ahead of time. So I definitely encourage you to employ those loved ones who have grammar skills to be your internal reviewers. And then the same thing applies to once you've submitted your application. Once you've submitted your application, it is submitted. You can't edit it and then resubmit. However, we have had a couple folks reach out about this, and I have seen some folks just decide, something came up and that they wanted to add, and so they removed their submission and then resubmitted. So that is an option. It's a little bit of legwork, but that is an option if you've already submitted and then have something that you absolutely feel is necessary to include and add. That's the way that I would recommend doing it.
Thank you. Okay, this is a question, again, for you, Lares. Is there a specific image size and resolution or file size for the images in the work samples?
So I saw this pop up in the Q&A, and I was trying so hard to find these stats on Submittable. So Submittable does have its own size requirements, and you will get a little alert if your file size is too large. I want to say it's something like 400 megabytes, but I could be wrong. Submittable will have it in there and tell you as you are uploading. I always recommend uploading the highest quality images you can within that file size limit. It's going to show your work in the best light. So I'm sorry I don't have the exact statistics or the numbers for those file sizes in front of me, but I do know that it is on Submittable. And as an artist who submitted something on Submittable a week ago, I know that it will tell you if it's too large.
Great. Okay. Good.
One thing I'll just add is all file types are accepted. So when we were building the application, RedLine's role is truly the administrator, where Artwork Archive obviously founded, is the vision behind the grant program, and obviously the distributor of the curriculum, but we are kind of the mechanics, and obviously the charitable organization that will be sending the grant agreements out through. But just as a heads up, all file types are welcome.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. So we're gonna go on. There's a few questions for Justin. So people are wondering if they need to be a member of Artwork Archive.
Not at all. Not at all. Absolutely no need to be. This is completely separate and distinct from that. Anybody is welcome to apply. Those that are members of Artwork Archive will receive absolutely zero. Like, that is not something that the way we have established this jurying process is that is a complete blind tag to anybody that is participating in the jurying process. We actually have, like, the first passes are all completely anonymous and don't even have names or anything associated with them. So yeah, we have absolutely no need to be a member of Artwork Archive.
You're making it sound like it's a bad thing, Justin.
No, it's a wonderful thing, but I want to make sure that there's an arm's length distance. Like, tons of artists already use Artwork Archive to manage their grant applications, their residency applications, to do all these business type things. But the last thing I want anybody thinking is that there's a direct correlation between, like, there is a requirement to be part of this. There is absolutely not. Obviously, we'd love all of you to check out Artwork Archive, but no association with this grant other than we're the ones funding it.
So then there was a follow-up question, which maybe you can clarify too, which was about what level, how are you a member of Artwork Archive? Is that through an account, or is that through reading the newsletter, getting things like that? Can you specify what that means on the application?
Oh, when we asked that, I think that question was there to just determine whether someone actually uses the platform. I think the newsletter, that's once again separate from the Artwork Archive platform. So when you're answering that question, that really is trying to determine, is this a platform you're already using?
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so then someone else, also for Justin.
Sorry, Katie, sorry to interject. Once again, this is yet another kind of admin related question, which, similar to the levels thing we were talking about before, whether you're a member or not just means that when it comes to our communication out, we're automatically communicating this to members of Artwork Archive already. So if that checkbox is no, that just means we make sure that you're getting the communication outside of it. So it's more admin than anything else.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And so this is another admin related question. It's about kind of the fine print of ownership over artwork. They said that in the past, in the fine print, grant writers have had some type of ownership over their work. Ultimately, does Artwork Archive own any rights to the work created under this grant? Can you answer that one, Justin or Louise?
Both of us are equally, like, that is not us. You will look, if you ever look at the terms and services on, anything RedLine and those guys do, anything we do, never at any time do we, this is your artwork. We never assume any copyright ownership or otherwise. This is purely for jurying purposes, and we'll never ever use anything from an artist without their express permission.
Great. Another one for Justin. We'll keep going on Justin. Will the grant be offered again next year? Is it an ongoing grant?
Oh boy, that's a toughie. Listen, I can't answer it because I don't know. This is a total pilot for us. It has been such an amazing learning experience. When we got these survey results back and really saw, like, the impact quantified. I mean, we talk with artists every day, all day, everyone on the staff. So we obviously know that there's been an impact. When we saw it quantified in the survey results and really started to get a better sense of just how devastating this period has been to artists and the art community at large, we were already passionate about the topic. This just kind of lit a fire. So at this stage, we are in a position to be able to do this right now. We had some help from some friends and the wonderful people at RedLine to help make this happen. They shared in our excitement and belief that this was really important, not just as a general rule and general practice, but also from a timing standpoint. So for now, I say, I don't know. We sure hope that it is as big a success as we hope it is. We sure hope that we get amazing feedback on the curriculum. And in the event that we're able to do it in the future, we would love to.
Great. And I'll have a few more here since we're wrapping up in terms of time. I'll answer these ones. Will there be a recording of the webinar? Yes, there will. We will send out a recording of the webinar within the next 24 hours, about 24 hours, to everyone that's registered and was on the list. And that you can also find it on that on the grant page, which is again under the resources tab at artworkarchive.com. So you can always find it there. And then there's another one. How do we access the curriculum? Will the curriculum be offered only to applicants of the grant? And yes, we will. So if you apply, we will automatically send you that curriculum for 6 weeks. Over the course of 6 weeks, we'll send you once a week an email. So anyone can get that. It's free to anyone that applies. You can also share it. So anyone that applies gets that, not anyone just that got the grant. And then we have, let's see if there's any other ones. We kind of have time for a fun one. Louise, this one's for you.
Sure.
What color is the wall behind you? What's that paint color?
I feel like it's the winner of the webinar of how much I am actually self-conscious about the mauve.
I knew mauve.
But that is how aesthetics in my life have gone forward. That is hilarious. It is mauve.
Well, and listen, I'm glad the attention's being drawn to that, because previous to this, when we were doing the rehearsal, because I have a 6-year-old home who is running back and forth through the house, I was hiding in the basement, and they all told me I was not allowed to do this in the basement because it looked like I was being held captive. So I'm glad they're focusing on the color of your wall.
I do not recommend a mauve background for your work samples. That is why the background of my home is mauve. I moved into this. But one thing I do just want to share, Katie, too, with everyone is that, there are at least 75 questions here in the Q&A. We will capture all of these and it will be available through an FAQ as well on the website, in addition to, of course, this digital webinar being available. So if you do not get your question answered right now, definitely don't use mauve as a background for your work samples. This will be the full Q&A organized will be also available after this session.
And Katie, are there any other kind of consolidated ones that we can hit really quick before we wrap?
There are some eligibility questions, which I can go through really quickly. There is not a fee to enter.
No fee to enter.
You can just, there's no application fee. You can enter from anywhere within the world. There's one that I don't know, which is, can you apply under a pen name, which has been asked a few times. Maybe Justin or Louise?
Louise, that's you.
I mean, if you go by an artist name, like for example, Thomas Evans goes by Detour, please include your artist name or however you and your practice like to be recognized professionally. That is absolutely acceptable. Let us know what we should refer to you as.
Great. And there are a bunch of others which we will get to. We will get to all of them, but I think that's about the time that we have for the webinar.
All right.
So will the FAQ be available on the website, Katie? Can we include that through there? So it'll be a link.
We'll actually add it to, maybe put it as a part of this main landing page. So once again, under resources, you'll be able to find out information. Like if you go to artworkarchive.com and then you just see the little resources tab at the top, that's where the recording will be. That's where there'll be more information on this. I would say give us a day to kind of process the sheer volume of questions. We'll consolidate, we'll throw something up there so you guys can check it out. And then once again, if there's any questions, what's the address you want to route questions to for this, Katie? If they're application related questions, you can ask that within submittable. If they're grant related questions, you can send it to team, TEAM @artworkarchive.com.
One question, I'm just seeing this real quickly. This is an international call available to everybody. So I know one person was curious if they were eligible, if they're living from Puerto Rico. Absolutely, you're eligible if you're coming from Puerto Rico.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Here's another one that I want to grab and see too, that I just saw come in. Is there a date limit to how old the artwork can or should be? A lot of times you see that it should be within the last 2-3 years. Is there any time limit to for this grant?
I mean, I do, just because of course I've sat in many review and panelist facilitation sessions. It is recommended to include current work, but it is okay to also include past work as long as it's alongside the current work as well. Now, I think depending upon the information you provide, some work does take years to create. It is, at times a lifetime of work, but I would say, try to be balanced in your use of current and previous work. And like Ladas was saying, it is best to put your best work forward. So if that is a little older, but you have the best quality of images and you feel like it speaks the best to your application or supports your application, then use those. But yeah, I would probably discourage only submitting work that's like 15 to 20 years old. We want to understand that this is a contemporary practice as far as this is what you do and what you're working on.
Right, because this is and just to piggyback on this,
yeah,
we are looking to fuel more of that. So having recent relevant examples is going to be healthy or going to be helpful for us. I'm gonna Katie, we're already close to the hour mark anyway, so like we might as well just lightning round a few of these. If I work in different communities, can you enter 2 different submissions? It's 1 submission per individual. Are there file size limits? I think that's been covered. Yes, someone asked, is it possible to compose an image with multiple images? Sure, but I think that may be difficult from the jurying process because we're going to be looking at these as individual works. So I wouldn't use that as a means of circumventing the 10. I would choose your 10 best works and put your best foot forward because it is going to be interpreted as a collage.
Yeah,
so,
and I would just add on to that someone asked whether details of images as well as images themselves, if you do have multiple perspectives that you feel like lend to the read of the work, then certainly. If it's site specific, but then you want to do a close-up because of the detail that is not clear at certain distances or angle, if you feel like it helps. But I wouldn't do 500 angles of the same image, you provide what is helpful to the jurors.
Yeah, someone asked, I've seen a couple similar things. Does the work all need to be from the same theme? Not at all. Like, I just want to reiterate, put your best foot forward. Submit the stuff that you think tells the best story about you as an artist and your artwork in general. I'm just looking, there's a lot of fee questions. Reiterating, no fee whatsoever. We want this to be as accessible as possible.
The last question was just, can I include samples of work done by my workshop participants? I would probably say if you want to include documentation of a collaboration or a community workshop, that's fine. But again, I wouldn't have that be, unless that is your practice always, which is, workshops with community or in collaboration, that's one thing. But if it's really documenting a moment of collaboration with community, I would have that it's okay to include one, but I wouldn't have it be the majority. You know, people want to get a sense of what your aesthetics are and your style, which I do
Right.
think that points to another question about, can I submit an image that was in collaboration? Well, especially if your work is entirely collaborative, please do that. But yes, it's also fine to submit work that is in collaboration with others.
And really, we are looking, these are individual artists we're looking at. We've had a lot of art collectives. We have had probably in the last 24 hours, 100 different nonprofits asking, are they able to apply as the nonprofit, as that collective? For the purposes of this grant, obviously we'd love to open our arms to everyone, but we really are focused on individual artists with this grant. So just wanted to make that distinction as well. So I think let's wrap, because there's a lot of great questions here. A lot of there's a lot of them that are very similar. So we will condense this into an FAQ and start adding to that live. On this web page, I don't know if my screen is still shared, but you will see down here at the bottom, you can enter your email address and stay on top of updates relating to the grant. That's pretty much the best way to stay informed about any updates, etc. And once again, from question standpoint, on the application side, you'll see a means of asking questions for the submittable side of things. And then if you have general grant related questions, you can go ahead and send an email to team@artworkarchive.com. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out to learn more about this. I can't tell you how excited we are to be part of this. I can't tell you how excited we are that we've got such an amazing organization like RedLine that could help us pull something like this off, because it is definitely something that has been an incredible learning experience for us. And we really hope that every single applicant is going to genuinely benefit from this curriculum aspect as well, because it is a wealth of information that we've gathered over the last decades with inputs from some of the brightest minds in the art world, really designed to help you accelerate your careers. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing applications from everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.